everyone, my name is Jo and I love to read. I'm finally coming to you today with my December 2020 wrap up. We are halfway through January. Oh my gosh, this year is absolutely going to fly by, but I'll get straight into the wrap up because I'm sure you've heard that before a million times. I read 3 books in January, though one I didn't actually record on my Goodreads challenge because it was an audiobook and I'm not always super great at recording them, but it kind of ended up working out actually because when I went back and had a look at how many books I'd read for the year and what books, I'd actually recorded Vampire Academy twice somehow as being read, which meant that I wasn't going to achieve my goal, even though it was a goal that I altered, but it wasn't like 100% complete on Goodreads if I'd only done it once. But now with this other book, I was still at the number, which I think was like 23 or something like that. So it kind of worked out in a weird way, and I'm going to talk about this audiobook because it was really interesting as well, but I will talk about that one at the end because I'm not sure when I read it. So the first book I ended up finishing was Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb, which is the first book in the Farseer trilogy. This one I ended up rating 5 stars, but it only sort of luckily scraped into it, even though I have a lot of warm feelings about this book, obviously. It wasn't one that I thought when I was initially reading it that it was going to be 5 stars. Actually, before I started to read it, I felt a bit anxious about it because I'd heard that it was a bit of a slog and that the main character, Fitz's life, was a bit miserable and a bit sad, and I don't really enjoy books like those. The other one that I read that I consider like a miserable book is The Mists of Avalon by Marion Zimmer Bradley. I started reading that book before I found out that the author enabled her convicted pedophile husband. She knew for many years that he was abusing kids and actually helped him abuse them and enabled and didn't report him. So aside from the fact that I hated that book because it was boring, I will not be reading any of her other books because I did not know, and it sickens me that people like this exist in the world even if she wasn't the one actually doing it, or they can't prove that she was doing it. She was still enabling it, which is horrid. Anyways, that took a bit of a dark turn, but back to this. When I started reading it though, it wasn't actually a miserable book, and it was one that I found pretty easy to read, but I felt like I wasn't getting very far. It's a very slow-paced book, but I didn't mind it because I enjoyed following along in Fitz's life and seeing as he triumphed still. Like, he had a lot of setbacks, but he still at the end of the day kept triumphing and ascending. And I suppose that is where there is a difference between books like Robin Hobb's and books like The Other Lady, because I feel like some books it's just bad, 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 and nothing good ever happens, and the characters are also miserable people and like miserable personalities, and that is really frustrating. Whereas even though a lot of bad things happen to Fitz, and I wouldn't exactly call him a positive person, he still is not down and dredgy and dreary and unhappy with things. Like, he has had a lot of shit happen in his life that we go through, a lot of moments where I was like, I just want to give you a big hug and let you move in with me and take care of you like you should have been taken care of. But there are still people in his life that do take care of him and that do support him. Man, I'm getting like, my eyes are glazing up a little bit. I just, if you read the book, you know what I mean. Like, I felt so bad for him, but don't let this discourage you into thinking that it is a miserable book. I want to beat that into people's heads because and this is my own fault, but I inflected based on other people's reviews and comments that I was going to find this really horrible and boring and depressing to get through, but it was actually really, really, really interesting. It's a medieval setting. Fitz is the bastard child of a prince in waiting to be king, but then once it was revealed that he had a bastard, that must have been really horrible in this particular world, and so he actually steps down, and then it's about, what's Fitz going to do with his life. Like, how is he, basically his grandfather on his mum's side is like, you're costing too much money and not really giving me anything, and you only are in this world because your dad like slept with my daughter. I don't know whether she wanted it or not, that's a whole other conversation, but from this guy's point of mind back in this medieval-esque England setting. He was like, you're just a problem for me, so here you go. You get raised. So from the age of 6, he was thrust upon the royal family, and he had to learn how to make himself useful so that he, and not perceived as a threat, so that they would want to keep him on and not kill him, because being a bastard, he is a bit of a threat to the line. And I really enjoyed it. I really loved following him and what he did with his life. And there were moments where I was like, why do you, like, you know, don't do that, Fitz, or like, good job, or like, it pulled on my heartstrings, and it really made me root for him. I'm really looking forward to the next book now. The last quarter really kicked up the notch for me, and I was just so excited to see what happens next. I was really sad by one of the events that happened at the end of the book, but I'm really excited to see how things go. There's still enough good characters that I really want to see what they do to the bad people, and I'm just... that last quarter just like kicked this book up to 5 stars, and I just couldn't, like, what did I say when I was venting to this Discord that I'm in of readers, and I was like, I have to stop reading because of the tension, but I want to keep reading because of the tension. Like, it was it's fantastic. And honestly, like, I'd forgotten that books can feel like this sometimes, and I wanted to know, but I couldn't keep reading. And like, Daniel was like on Xbox when I was like, and he was just, him and like all of his mates like listening and just like, you know, Joe's reading another book. Yeah, it was funny. It was an epic ride that last quarter, and I'm really glad that I picked this up, and I'm really, really, really looking forward to the next volume. Did I say that I gave it 5 stars? Can you tell? So the second book that I finished in December, and the last physical book that I finished for the year, is another Thoroughbred book. So it is number 45, Star's Chance. This series was created by Joanna Campbell, but this particular volume was written by Alice Leonhardt. And I don't remember what I rated this. Let me go to the story graph, because that's what I'm using at the moment. I will also be doing a video that's like more stats based and talking about like my experience with the story graph so far, but I think Goodreads doesn't have enough benefits for me to stay, although I like their platform and that, like, I like their visual better, but I understand obviously that story graph is very new and those things are going to continue as things get better. What I really like about Storygraph is that the ratings for books are down to the bottom, so you can read about a book and you can save it to your shelves but not get influenced by other people unless you're actually looking for that, which is something that I realise, as you know, evidenced by this, that is a problem for me. So that's my main reason for swapping to Storygraph, but I am waiting for when you're allowed to put a comment in with your page count. They're still working on that. I gave this one 3 stars. The plot of this, as there is a racehorse that in the previous books got really sick and he's recovered, but he's got none of his pre-existing fire, and he's actually quite... if his owner is trying to encourage him to do something that he doesn't want to do, like even just walking through water, which he never had an issue with before, even though that is an issue for some horses, once they learn, they tend to be okay. He doesn't really have any trauma in his life to explain why he's suddenly afraid of water, but he's just like, no, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do anything. And he doesn't even want to sort of walk beyond like the stables or the paddocks or anything like that. He doesn't want to go on a trail. He doesn't want to race, and he's so dull until she tries to push him a bit further, and then he's just like, no. Then he gets really aggressive, which is not in this horse's character at all. He was a sweetheart who also had fire to run, but was very easy to control. So this is about the main character shipping him and herself off to a ranch in Montana, where she's learning from one of her previous work horse colleagues, trying to rehabilitate him and get his spark back and get his enjoyment in life back. This one I only gave 3 stars because it was a bit trivial. Like, the main character really was good friends with the chick out in Montana that she's gone to get help from, but all of a sudden, just to suit the plot, she's deciding that her advice isn't helpful, when in the previous books it was that she was all for the advice and her boyfriend was actually the one that was resisting it. But now that we're in her point of view, she's the one that's like, it was kind of like a complete 180 on her character and her feelings towards the horsemanship of this lady that she's going to see. So that was really frustrating because it felt like it was just a lot of fake drama for the sake of drama. And I get that this is a middle grade, this is like the 45th book in this series, so they're maybe running a bit thin on plot lines, though there is about 70, 80 in the series. But it's just one of these things where like they're drawing out this condition that this horse has gone through, and like I get it, but also I feel like it could have been done better. But again, you know, they're probably less invested and more about, at the time, was just about channeling these books out. So, you know, not bad to have read as a part of the series, but yeah, I don't think it's anything special at all. And then the last book that I read, I'm gonna have to go to Audible and have a look at what I would really love with Audible, which I suppose that's not really the function of it, that's more of a function of like the story graph, is I would love if Audible could like separate things into what you've read and like you could have your own shelves on there and stuff, but that's, yeah, probably not really its function. So the Audible book I listened to was actually an Audible original, so I don't know whether you can get it elsewhere. Like, I don't know if you can buy a copy of this book, I'm not sure, or it might just be that the audiobook is only out on Audible. But it's from the author of The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, and that is Mark Manson, and this title is actually Love Is Not Enough. So this was really cool. It was one of the free books that Audible offers, so I'm not sponsored, but I'm getting into the audiobooks more, and I really like that, as well as one book credit a month, which is $18, I think my membership is, $18 AUD. You also get an access to a free editor's pick, so you kind of get 2 books for a really great price. The only problem, I suppose, with the subscription service is if you do not want to listen to an audiobook every month, you have to keep your subscription up, but I think you can like put it on pause and whatever. Anyways, but this was a free one, and I thought, oh, you know, I'm interested in that, and it was really fun. It kind of felt more like a bit of a chatty podcast, which is probably why I really enjoyed it on Audible. I didn't rate it, but I would probably give it 4 stars. It was basically all about, though, you can have love in a relationship, but sometimes love is not enough. And we followed, I think, about 4 or 5 different people that were having relationship issues, and they approached Mark, who I don't think he's like got a degree or anything like that in counselling or therapist, but he ran like a dating help website. I think this is all correct. I'm just off the top of my head trying to remember, but he's not like a qualified person, but he was just kind of giving general advice based on other areas of work that have taught him how to give this specific type of advice. So we went through all these different relationship problems with people, being like, there was one lady that she was in an affair with a married man, and she was like, I know that this isn't right, that I deserve more, but I don't know how to get out of this because he knows all my flaws and still loves me regardless, and I know all of his flaws, and I'd like how, but she, you know, and she was just finding it difficult to create boundaries. And so you're following along each of these different people's narratives, and you go through all these different chapters based on it. So like that particular one was about setting boundaries, and there's like other ones, I don't know, I'm trying to remember, like, I really can't, you know, it's been a while since I'd listened to it, since it was back in December, and it's mid-January, but it was really good, and it was really fun. It was a really conversational book, and I really liked that you got to see how their relationships developed and how his tips helped them be better people for themselves and better people in their relationships, whether that was breaking off what they were in and going for something more healthy, or helping to get better, like with their current things. There was this one guy who was a divorcee, and he was really, really struggling because his ex-wife was still contacting him all the time and was basically like, you know, my life is falling apart without you, like, you know, I've got an eating disorder and it's your fault, and all this stuff that is not his fault and not his responsibility, but he felt so guilty and he didn't know how to let her go. But then he was seeing this other really new lady, and he was so terrified that once they moved in together, she was just going to fall apart and be this mess of a person that was like his what he was having to deal with his ex-wife, and he was terrified of conflict, and it was so interesting to see Mark help this guy through what was a normal relationship, but because of the trauma that this guy had felt in his previous one, it made him not know how to cope with this one, even though she was a totally normal person, and now, well, at the end of the book, they're happy and off they go. So it was really good. It was good to see him apply his different chapters and advice to different relationship scenarios and to see how they developed. It wasn't just that you learnt about this scenario and then you never got to see what happened. It was kind of like we were watching this TV show and seeing how the couples developed. It was really introspective as well, and I feel like even being in a pretty healthy, at least from my point of view, relationship, I still felt like I learned some things as well from it, so I really encourage people to listen, and I really enjoyed it. That's everything for my wrap up in December. How was your reading month in December? Did you read anything cool? I'm really looking forward to being able to like theme my stuff once my TBR is gone so that I can read some Christmassy books. Did you read any Christmassy books? How did it go? Chat to me in the comments below, or tell me what you're reading now, because like December was an age ago, according to me and probably you guys. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!